You are being read right now, not by me, by them. The people in your life who smile when you speak, who nod when you explain yourself, who ask follow-up questions that feel like interest but function like interrogation. They are building a file on you, not a physical file, not a conspiracy, something far more ordinary and far more dangerous, a mental map of your fears, your patterns, your triggers, your ambitions, your insecurities, and every single time you open your mouth without thinking, you add another detail to that map, another coordinate, another weakness plotted and pinned. And one day, not dramatically, not like a movie, but quietly, in the middle of a Tuesday afternoon, you will feel it. The subtle, sickening realization that someone used you, that someone knew exactly what to say to get what they wanted from you, and you handed them the script, word by word, conversation by conversation, with your own voice. That feeling, that slow, burning humiliation of being outplayed, that is not new to you, is it? You have felt it before. Maybe more than once, maybe more times than you want to count. That moment when an argument turns and suddenly you are on the defensive, scrambling to explain yourself, and you cannot figure out how you got there. That moment when a plan you shared quietly gets undermined before it even begins. That moment when someone uses a private confession you made, something you shared in a moment of trust, and weaponizes it against you in a moment you never anticipated. And you stood there, exposed, outmaneuvered, and furious, not just at them, but at yourself, because somewhere deep down, you already knew. You said too much, again. This is not bad luck. This is not a character flaw. This is not because you are weak or naive or broken. This is because you were trained systematically from childhood by schools and parents and society to be open, to communicate, to express, to share, to be vulnerable. And nobody, not one person, not one teacher, not one mentor, sat you down and told you the other half of the equation. Nobody told you that the world is not a therapy session, that not every listener is an ally, that your words, every single one of them, are information, and information in the wrong hands is a weapon that can be turned around and pointed directly at you. The world taught you to speak. Nobody taught you when to go silent. And that single gap in your education has cost you more than you will ever fully be able to calculate. Now here's what makes this particularly dangerous. The people exploiting your openness are not always villains. They are not always aware of what they are doing. Some of them are operating on pure instinct, the instinct to gather information, to understand leverage, to position themselves advantageously in every relationship, every negotiation, every social dynamic. They learned through experience, through observation, through pain, that knowing more about someone than that someone knows about you is an advantage, a silent, invisible, devastating advantage, and they use it. Every day, in every room, in every conversation, while you are still operating on the old programming, still being open, still explaining, still reacting, still handing out the keys to your internal world to anyone who asks politely. You need to understand something about human beings that most people are too uncomfortable to say out loud. We are all, at some level, strategic creatures. We are all gathering data about the people around us. The question is, are you doing it consciously or are you doing it asleep? Are you aware of what you are revealing, or are you broadcasting in the clear, unencrypted, for anyone with ears to receive? Because the gap between those two positions, conscious versus asleep, is not small. It is the gap between being a player in the game and being a piece on the board. There is a man who understood this dynamic with a clarity that bordered on the surgical. His name is Robert Greene, and his work, particularly his study of the 48 laws of power, was drawn from thousands of years of documented human behavior, from emperors and generals, from court intrigues and corporate wars, from the psychology of seduction, manipulation, and domination. He did not invent these principles, he excavated them. He dug them out of history and laid them bare for anyone willing to look. And what he found, consistently, across cultures, across centuries, across every level of human society, was this: the most powerful people were almost never the most talkative. They were the most deliberate. They spoke when it served them. They went silent when silence served them better. And they understood at a bone-deep level that every word spoken is a transaction. And in most transactions, the person who speaks more loses more. Greene wrote, and this should stay with you: powerful people impress and intimidate by saying less. The more you say, the more likely you are to say something foolish. Read that again. The more you say, the more likely you are to say something foolish. Not because you are foolish, but because volume produces vulnerability. The more data you emit, the more material exists to be used against you. And the most dangerous words are not the obviously foolish ones. They are the honest ones, the passionate ones, the ones you said from the heart because you trusted someone who did not deserve that trust. So what is the answer? How do you live? How do you operate? How do you maintain relationships, build trust, function in a world built on communication, when communication itself has been turned into a liability? That's the question we are going to answer today. Not with vague advice, not with motivational platitudes, with specific, grounded, psychologically precise principles that you can begin applying immediately. Principles drawn from the deepest wells of power philosophy and from the cold, observable reality of how human beings actually operate when they think no one is watching. And before we go any further, understand this. This knowledge is for protection, not destruction. What you are about to learn is not designed to make you cold or isolated or paranoid. It is designed to give you sovereignty, the ability to choose consciously, deliberately, what you reveal and what you protect. The ability to move through the world as an observer rather than an open book. The ability to stop being a source of ammunition for people who are not fighting for you. The first principle: silence is not absence, it is presence at a different frequency. Most men have been taught to associate silence with passivity, with having nothing to say, with being awkward or weak or disengaged, and so they fill every silence. Every pause in a conversation becomes an opportunity to speak. Every quiet moment becomes uncomfortable, something to be resolved with words, and in that compulsive filling of silence, they reveal everything. Think about the last time you were in a tense situation and you felt the pressure to speak, to explain, to smooth things over, to fill the void, and think about what came out. Probably more than you intended, probably things you later wished you had kept to yourself. That pressure, that discomfort with silence is a vulnerability, and experienced strategic people know how to activate it. They go quiet, they let the silence sit, They wait, and they let you fill it, because they know the person who cannot tolerate silence will always say more than is necessary, and the excess is where the intelligence lies. When you learn to sit in silence comfortably, when you can let a pause extend without flinching, without rushing to fill it, without needing to resolve the discomfort, you have developed a form of psychological endurance that most people never build. And that endurance communicates something powerful without a single word. It says, I speak less, I observe more, and I miss nothing. The second principle, every explanation you give is a negotiation you are losing. This is one of the most difficult things to internalize because it cuts against everything we were taught about respect and communication. We were taught that explaining yourself is mature, that justifying your... The third principle. In conflict, the first person to raise their voice has already lost. Think about every serious confrontation you have ever been in. Think about the moment when the energy shifted. Almost always, it was the moment when one person lost emotional control, raised their voice, became visibly agitated, started speaking faster, louder, with less precision. And in that moment, regardless of the logic of their argument, regardless of whether they were right or wrong, they lost the psychological high ground. Because emotional escalation broadcasts desperation. It says, I need this to end differently than it is going. I cannot handle this as it is. I need you to react to my intensity. And the moment you need something from someone in a conflict, they have leverage over you. The dark truth about conflict is this. It is almost never about logic. It is about who controls the frame. The frame is the emotional temperature of the interaction. The person who controls the temperature, who stays cool, precise, almost unnervingly calm while the other escalates, that person controls the entire interaction. Not because they are suppressing their feelings, but because they have chosen not to perform them. And that choice, visible, deliberate, impossible to deny, shifts the power dynamic completely. The escalating person looks unstable. The calm person looks untouchable. Drop this in the comments. Silence is not weakness. It is the most disciplined form of dominance. The fourth principle. Your ambitions are not safe in other people's minds. There is a psychological phenomenon that has been studied and documented and is still almost entirely ignored in everyday life. When you share a goal with other people, when you announce what you are building, what you are planning, what you are working toward, your brain receives a neurological reward simply from the act of sharing. The social acknowledgement of your ambition produces a dopamine response similar to actually achieving the goal. And that response, that premature sense of progress, quietly drains the urgency that was driving you. The hunger dissipates into conversation, the fire spreads out across words, and the goal, which was private and burning and yours, becomes something that lives in other people's perceptions of you rather than in your own action. But that is only the first cost. The second is more concrete. When people know what you are building, they respond to it. Sometimes with genuine support, but often, more often than you want to believe, with something else. Envy that looks like encouragement, doubt that sounds like concern, the subtle, persistent energy of someone who does not want you to succeed, expressed not through open opposition, but through small erosions. The well-timed discouragement, the planted seed of doubt, the casual comment that lands just at the moment when your confidence is most fragile. Keep your plans dark. Let your results be the announcement. Drop this in the comments. They will not see it coming because I never told them it was coming. The fifth principle. Questions are the most powerful weapons in any conversation and the most underused. There is a massive difference between a man who makes statements and a man who asks questions. The man who makes statements has committed. He has planted his flag. He can be argued with, mocked, dismissed, or contradicted. He has shown his position and given the other side a target. The man who asks questions, strategic, precise, carefully chosen questions, has done none of those things. He has revealed nothing of his own position. He has given no information. He has not committed to any stance that can be challenged. And yet, he has learned, he has gathered, he has maneuvered. Because the person answering the questions is the one doing the revealing. The person asking is doing the observing. Socrates was the most dangerous intellectual in the history of Athens, not because he told people what to think, but because he asked them questions that forced them to confront the contradictions in their own thinking. He never attacked, he never argued, he asked, and then he listened. And what he heard, consistently, was people exposing the fragility of their own certainties. He was so effective, so surgically capable of dismantling the false confidence of those around him, that the authorities of Athens eventually concluded the only way to stop him was to kill him. The man who asks questions and goes silent and listens is always, always better informed than the man who speaks. Always. Drop this in the comments. I ask, I listen, I know exactly what I need to know. The sixth principle. Non-reaction is the rarest and most powerful signal a man can send. We live in a world designed to get reactions from you. Social media is engineered for it. News is written for it. Other people's behavior towards you is, often, consciously or not, calibrated to produce a specific response, because reactions are information. When you react with anger, you have confirmed that this thing has power over you. When you react with anxiety, you have revealed that you feel threatened. When you react with eagerness, you have shown that you want something badly enough to perform for it. Every reaction is a broadcast, and every broadcast is data that someone can use. The man who develops genuine non-reaction, not suppression, not coldness, but true, grounded, unshakable composure, that man cannot be easily mapped. He cannot be reliably manipulated through the normal channels because the normal channels require his participation, his anger, his fear, his need. When those are not available, when he simply observes what is happening and responds from deliberate choice rather than automated reaction, the entire playbook of social manipulation becomes ineffective against him. This is not something that happens overnight. It is built through practice, through the slow, patient work of catching yourself before the reaction fires and choosing differently. But every time you choose differently, every time you sit in discomfort instead of reacting to it, you are building something that most men never build, a self that cannot be moved by ordinary pressure. Drop this in the comments. I do not react, I respond when I choose to. The seventh principle. Silence after victory is the most strategic move you will ever make. This is the one that will feel most unnatural, because the drive to celebrate success, to announce, to be seen, to be acknowledged, is one of the most human impulses that exists. You worked for something. You achieved it. Of course you want people to know. Of course you want the recognition. And that impulse, completely understandable, completely human, is also the one that most frequently turns your victories into vulnerabilities. Because when you announce success, you make yourself a target for every form of resentment, envy, and competitive aggression that was previously operating in the dark. You make visible what was previously invisible. You give your adversaries, and many of them did not even know they were your adversaries until that moment, a concrete picture of your capabilities, your progress, and your trajectory. And now they can plan accordingly. The most formidable players in any arena are almost never the loudest. They are the ones you did not see coming. The ones who were building quietly while you were watching someone else. The ones whose track record suddenly became impossible to ignore, not because they announced it, but because it accumulated to the point where it could no longer be denied. Let your silence be the loudest thing about you. Let your results accumulate in the dark, and let people discover what you have built, not through your announcement, but through the undeniable, unavoidable weight of your progress. Drop this in the comments. My silence is my strategy. My results are my announcement. Now, I want you to step back for a moment, because we have covered a lot of ground. 7 principles, 7 shifts, 7 ways of moving through the world that are fundamentally different from what you have been doing. And I know some part of you may be thinking, this sounds like I have to become someone cold, someone closed off, someone who does not connect. And I want to address that directly and honestly, because that is a misunderstanding of what silence as power actually means. Silence as power is not isolation. It is not emotional shutdown. It is not the kind of walls that keep everyone out because you are afraid of being hurt. That kind of silence is fear wearing the mask of strategy, and it produces loneliness, not power. True silence as power is something different. It is the silence of a man who knows what he holds, who knows who has earned access to his inner world and who has not, who can be warm, connected, engaged, fully present in a relationship, and simultaneously protective of the information that in the wrong hands would be turned against him. It is discernment, not distance. It is the ability to be selective rather than universally open or universally closed. And that selectivity, that quiet, sovereign ability to decide what to reveal and to whom, that is the mark of a man who has genuinely come into his own. Most people will never have this, not because they are incapable, but because nobody ever handed them the framework. Nobody ever sat down with them and said, your words have weight, your silences have power, your reactions are data. Your openness, however genuine, however well-intentioned, is all